Let me say happy Father's Day to you. I'm glad to be here on a Father's Day. My wife did not come with me because she is fixing something special for me when I go home. And so I get something to look forward to, but I'm not allowed to speed to get there, but I just drive normally and it'll be there. All right. So I don't know what she's doing. But anyhow, so glad to be here with you. I think the biggest problem in our society today is that we've got a lot of single parent households. And that's what creates a lot of problem all across the United States. And so they don't know the value of a father being in the home. By the way, I grew up again with a mother. My father had left home, and I'll share a little bit about that, when I was 10. And basically every Father's Day, I gave my mother a Father's Day card because she served not only as my mother, but she also served the position of my father. And I knew I had a father out there, but it's like she was playing that role, and I wanted to make sure she knew I appreciated what she did. So if you happen to be just a single parent, I just want you to be aware that you are playing an important role, regardless of the fact that maybe your spouse is not with you. I received something this morning. I want to read it to you, and then I'm going to get into my message. But it said that fatherhood is an esteemed office created by God for the following reasons. And I believe we already prayed. I heard so much prayer here today, and I know you prayed for me. And so I'm going to just continue on. Number one, a father is the first leader/head that God put in place to lead the family. That's true. You find Ephesians chapter 5, verse 23 states that. Second, a father is a life giver, and God has made it so. Genesis chapter 4, verse 1. You are the life giver. Without you, there would be no children. A father carries authority from God to bless. Genesis 27, verse 4. Can you imagine, even as a father said, pray for my son. You know, he's already 19. And it's like, that's something that's great. You have a chance to pray for your son and believe for him. And we should believe for each other. But a father can actually put the blessing upon his child. The father protects his family from harm and provides shelter. 1 Timothy chapter 5, verse 8. A father is the first priest, teacher, and role model to lead the family to God. Genesis 18, verse 19. These are great verses. 6, a father leaves an inheritance for his children's children. Proverbs 13, 22. And so make sure you leave something behind, all right? So your children be blessed. Number 7, it says, a father loves and forgives every wrong to maintain peace and bring harmony in the family. Matthew 6:12. And that's what a father should be doing. And so with a Father's Day, let me just say, what would it be a Father's Day without, a dad joke? Is it okay? You got to have some dad jokes. And if you don't have one yet, got to get them up for your family if they're coming over. So what do they call a cow that no longer gives milk? A milk dud. Right? All right. What did the janitor say when he came out of the janitor's closet? Supplies. One more, and then I won't. Why did the man get fired from the calendar factory? He took days off. You got to have some dad jokes on Father's Day. I'm going to tell you, if I start telling my kids dad jokes, and I was doing this in the car, we were traveling somewhere on vacation together and, different cars, and I'm texting all of them these dad jokes. And finally they said, would you just stop? After a while, I guess they can't take it. But someone wrote the humorous word entitled, The World According to Dad. And there are words that dads say that you might remember, words like this. This is going to hurt me more than it hurts you. Or quiet, I'm watching the ball game. Some of you know that one. Don't forget to check the oil. I like this one. Bring back the change. Child will say, well, how should I know? Ask your mother. A lot of times they send you over to mom. When I was your age, I walked 5 miles to and from school each day, and it was uphill both ways. Look, you're going, and you're going to have fun. Yeah. Then you hear this from a dad. Who's paying the bills around here anyway? If you break your leg, don't come running to me. Don't put your feet on the furniture. Your mother will kill you. Quit playing with your food. Or be quiet. Can't you see I'm trying to think? And the kids always say, well, why? Because I said so. If you don't quit, I'm going to call your mother. You better get that junk picked up before your mother comes in here. I can't wait till you have the kids of your own. And then it's like, I was not asleep. I was just resting my eyes. We do that a lot. There's all kinds of sayings that dads say that you could add to the list. So I didn't exhaust them all. You could start writing them up. But being a parent and a father can be an interesting and trying experience. And do we have anything on the overhead at all? Oh, happy Father's Day. Okay, we got something. And now you can stay right at that verse. Thank you. By the way, there was one teenager said to his father, do you mind if I use, one father said to his teenage son, do you mind if I use the car tonight? I'm taking your mother out to eat, and I would like to impress her. Like, give me my car back. I like the letter, if you got your college kid, the letter from the college student that said to his parents, please send food packages. All they serve here is breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And another son wrote home to his dad, and he said, dear Dad, please let me hear from you more often, even if it's only 5 or 10. Some of you guys don't get these, no? But we're here today not only to honor the Lord, but we're here to honor the fathers. And it's very important we realize their importance. I want you to think about some things which we need to say thanks to Dad for. And there's just 3 points that I want to make. And I'm going to read the points and then we'll get into it. But you need to thank him for material provision. You need to thank him for faithful instruction. And you need to thank him for godly illustrations or examples. So thanks for material provision. Let's read the scripture before that. And I think it's Ephesians chapter 6, verse 1-3. It says, children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. And it comes with a promise. If you do this, it may go well with you, and you may enjoy long life. If you do not respect your parents, don't expect to live long. I believe this is something that's very true and very real. But in the next slide there, which would be thanks for the material possessions, let's go to the verse that goes with that. The next slide. It says in 1 Timothy chapter 5, verse 8, anyone who does not provide for their relatives, and especially for their own household, has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. And I found that after I got married, that became a very important verse to me because I had to provide for my wife. And when we had children, I had to provide for them as well. And if I couldn't provide for them, then I was worse than an infidel, which means worse than an unbeliever. And if you think about it, it was very powerful to me to have that scripture because if a father does not provide materially with food or clothing or shelter, then he's actually denied the faith in Christ. And he's worse than an unbeliever. Why would such a father be worse than an unbeliever? Because even the unbelievers provide for their families. I said to you before as I started, when I was 10 years old, my father left home. My 2 oldest brothers, there were 7 in the family, my 2 oldest brothers were in the military. And my oldest brother is 15 years older than I am. So he was 25 at the time. And my older sister was married and out of the house, and there were 7 of us. So that left 4 of us still at home when my dad left. And I want you to know that the first 10 years of my life, they were very important years, and I can still look back and remember a lot of things where I can give thanks to God for the provisions my dad gave to me. My dad worked very hard at the brickyard, and he got a position there because he used to work in the coal mines. And so when he applied, because of his skill set of working in the coal mines, they had to bring in coal on train cars. And in the wintertime, when it would freeze up, he'd have to go out and use dynamite to loosen up the coal so they could take it in and fire up the kiln that would actually, bake the brick. And so he was working this job. He came home. He looked like a coal miner, looked like he was in soot all over him and his dirty clothes, but he worked hard so that we could have a life. I realized the provision that he made. I never knew my dad making much money, but we always had food on the table. Even if he had to go out in the woods and hunt some wild animals so that we could actually, prepare them for dinner or put them in the freezer for later, we always had food. God had a way of using the skill set of my father to bring in food. On the weekends when we went to the grocery store, we didn't go to one grocery store. My dad, because of the money he made, which was not a lot, he went to 3 grocery stores. He's looking for the best bargain. Where can he get the best price for this? And then he would go and he would buy it. 3 grocery stores. Every weekend they went out shopping, and they knew where the bargains were. And the house that we lived in, some would say it wasn't much. We had 3 bedrooms for everybody that was in the house, and 2 of the bedrooms in the back had no heat at all. Yet we didn't mind it. Of course, when you get up in the morning and your feet hit the floor, it's pretty cold, and you want to run into the warm part of the house really quick because of how the condition of the heat. I sort of laughed because my wife, they had 2 bedrooms in their house that had no heat, and so it was sort of the same. But the funny thing in her house is her dad at one point had to replace the furnace. And when they replaced the furnace, there was ducts going up to the upstairs rooms, but somebody shut them off. And all those years they had no heat because nobody knew they had to open up the duct. But the new furnace guy opened up the ducts. They finally had heat after all these years. It's like they're saying, we got dressed under the covers. It was too cold to get out. One of those deals. Again, nothing fancy. And there was a time where we didn't have an inside bathroom. We had an outside bathroom. And so you got to go to the bathroom. You got to go out to the outhouse. And we would use the outhouse. And eventually we got an indoor plumbing, and we had a bathroom. Regardless of everything, it was a home. It was something that my father provided for us. My mother washed clothes in a wringer type washer that my dad provided for her. And if you know what a wringer washer is, most people don't know, but it has 2 little rolls that you got to put the clothes through to take all the water out. And then she would hang it on the clothesline that my dad also would hang up so my mother would have a place to hang up the clothes to dry. My dad would do repairs on the home and work on the cars and take care of the lawn, all to provide something nice for us as children. Dad always took me to the barber shop. The only thing with that barber, he was probably the right price, but he only knew 2 haircuts. He knew crew cut and flat top. He actually was a military barber, and he only learned 2 haircuts. You would do good there, right? But when they couldn't afford the haircuts, my dad got my mother a hair cutting tool so she could sit us in a chair and cut our hair. And there was those squeeze things. You got to squeeze to get your hair cut. And they would pull. I'd rather go back to the barber, but he couldn't afford it. So it's like, that's some of the things we had to deal with. We had no problem putting all 9 of us when we were all home into the car to get where we needed to go. We all had a place to sit, whether it's on the floor, someone's lap, or in the back window. They seemed like they always had a big back window with a place where you could lay across. Those are the things that we did. That was God's provision for us. And my dad got that car, and it was big enough for all of us to get in and go where we needed to go. My father had to build a spring house to catch water that came down from the hill so that we'd have water for in the house. He did all those little things. And at Christmas time, we always had a couple gifts. It would be maybe, we know that we'd get some clothing. Usually it was underwear, So you could expect at Christmas time, we're going to get some new underwear, woo, something exciting to get down and open up the gift for, But we also had another item as well. But my dad provided for me, regardless. The first 10 years of my life, he was there. Did your dad provide for you? He probably did, and you need to thank him for it. You need somehow go back and remind him of all those little things, because even though my dad left, there were good things I can remember. Then we need to thank him for the faithful instruction. That's the next point. Thank him for faithful instruction. And the verse that goes with that is Ephesians 6, verse 4. It says, "Fathers, do not exasperate your children. Instead, bring them up in the training and instruction of the Lord." Another verse would say, "Parents, don't be hard on your children. Raise them properly. Teach them and instruct them about the Lord." Another Bible says, "Don't keep on scolding and nagging your children, making them angry or resentful. Rather, bring them up with the loving discipline the Lord himself approves." Fathers are to instruct their children about many things. Now, my father never brought the discipline to us when we were growing up. He did it one time when I probably wasn't even born. But my father was so hard on his discipline that it scared him as he disciplined my older brother in anger, that he never would discipline us again. He let my mom do it. And I want you to know that if we need to spank, my mother had no reservation, Today we could have turned her into, Dyfus, but we got it, all right? But regardless of that, my dad instructed us. He would say, "Pay attention to what you're doing. Son, you need to be more careful." Even sometimes in his silence, saying nothing, he was still instructing. You read it. You heard it without him saying it. His life was one of business as a young boy. I would watch his actions and admire him. And I loved to watch him shave. I don't know why. I remember sitting there watching him shave, and I couldn't wait till one day I'm going to get old enough that I can shave as well. I wish I never got that day. But you think that I got to have that. And I want to say to you that even though my dad left home, there was some instruction. See, we did not take us to church. It may not have been this style of church or worship, but we always went to church. And when he wasn't there, I missed my dad deeply. And I would go up into the woods and sit on this large stone that was probably, half the size of this platform. And I'd sit there and I would begin to talk to the Lord. I realized through the teaching in church that he was my Papa Father. He was my daddy in heaven. And I could talk to him, and I spent hours going up there and just talking to my Papa, sharing with him my heart. Through that, God drew me closer to him. And before I ever met my father again to the point of being in a relationship, I was born again, saved, and called into the ministry. But if it wasn't for the roots of my dad taking me to a church, I might have missed out on the fact I could call upon God when I'm hurting inside. We need to know that he's there for us regardless. You know, when a father begins to have life experiences, he wants to make sure that his children don't do wrong, that they learn from their mistakes. And so they're saying, I don't want you to face the school of hard knocks. Listen to what I have to say to you. But can you imagine your child saying, Dad, could you not start by telling me everything I do wrong? Tell me what I did right first. And see, I think it's very, very important that, yeah, we speak to our children, but you got to be careful how you deliver the message that you want to give to them. All criticism and no praise is just not good. It's like, I can't do anything right for my father. I can't do anything right for my mom. And you begin to get upset. My kids got mad at me because I'm trying to look at their report card and I say, oh, well, you maybe need to have a little work there. It's like, can't you thank God for the grade I got? Can't you rejoice that I got this grade? No, all you have to do is come across with a negative. I never knew how it affected them, but they let me know today. So we got to be important how we deliver the message. So are you a coach or are you a critic? Ephesians 6:4, again, Paul said, don't keep on scolding and nagging your children, making them angry and resentful. Don't nag them. This is a sad confession of one father. And I think it's important that you hear this. He said, I took my children to school, but not to church. I taught them to drink, but not of the living water. I enrolled them in Little League, but not in Sunday school. I showed them how to fish, but not to be a fisher of men. I made the Lord's Day a holiday rather than a holy day. I taught them the church was full of hypocrites, and I made the greater hypocrite of them and myself. I gave them a colored TV, but provided them no Bible. I handed them the keys to the car, but I did not give them the keys of the kingdom of God. I taught them how to make a living, but failed to bring them to Christ, who alone can make life. You need to thank God for your father and for the faithful instructions that he gave to you, that he gave you for life. It was good advice. And even after my father was gone, it was that little advice of presence of church that took me to a next level in my faith. Thank God for what he did, even those instructions. Do you know what's going on today in the world with all the wars and missiles and everything that's taking place? If you haven't heard it, they're believing that this is coming to the end times, that Jesus Christ is coming back. And when I was standing in Israel on the Mount Scopus overlooking the eastern side of the walls of Jerusalem, there is an eastern gate there that's been sealed up. And they believe that when Jesus Christ comes, that gate is going to be open and he's going to enter in. In fact, if you don't know this, in some cemeteries, except veteran cemeteries, I don't know why they don't do it, but all the tombstones face east. And they face east because they're looking for Jesus Christ to come back, and he's coming in the east and they're going to be able to rise up and go. And so they're saying now that there's actually movement in those doors that have been sealed up that they're witnessing today. It's so important you live for the Lord. Your kids need to hear about Jesus Christ. So we want to thank him for the material provision, and we want to thank him for faithful instruction. But here's the last point, and it's thanks for godly illustration or example. By this, I mean the example that he gave for my life, for your dad gave for your life. 1 Corinthians 11:1 says, Paul said to the Corinthians who were his children in the faith, follow my example as I follow the example of Christ. Paul didn't say, do everything I do. He said, do everything I do which is Christ-like, or follow the example of Christ. Paul wasn't perfect, and neither are you or me. There are some things that I have done in life that I'll never talk to my kids about. I don't want them to know. And there's some things that they know and I feel bad about. When you get angry sometimes, you feel bad. Sometimes I have to apologize to them. If I get angry at their mother and I say something and they hear it, I have to go to her in front of them and say, I'm sorry. I remember one night, we had a basement in, like you do here, and I'm getting ready to preach for a Sunday night service, and my wife and I had words against each other, and I had to tell an usher, could you tell my wife to meet me downstairs? She met me downstairs. I said, look, unless you forgive me, I can't stand up in that pulpit and preach. When we do something wrong, we got to admit it. But there are some things I don't want my kids to follow or do. I want them to follow things that are Christ-like. That's the things I want them to copy out of my life. That's the most important thing. And loving people is very important. When I was 34 years old, I was living in the city of Bayonne, New Jersey, and I get a knock at my door, and I come down and find my father standing at the door. It's been a long time, but I was excited. My dad's here. Of course, I took him upstairs in our apartment, and we talked for a little while, and then we went out together, just my dad and I. We went over to Statue of Liberty, Liberty Island, and we're climbing up the stairs to be at that first level of the Statue of Liberty, and he's overlooking the New York skyline and said, who would ever think on this day that I'd be here with my son on the Statue of Liberty? 34, I'm standing there. I felt like a little kid holding the hand of my dad. I wasn't holding it, but to me, my dad's back. I got my dad. See, missing him so much that even when I dated a girl, she didn't have a father at home. She wasn't the girl for me. I only dated girls that had the mother and father in the house because it affected me so much, not having a dad. There was an emptiness inside that I needed filled. Of course, God the Father filled that void. But there's nothing like having my real father with me. I soon learned that, the reason he came back because my father left my mother, divorced her after some years, got married to my mother's best friend. She eventually died, and now there was a third lady that he met, and they were going to get married. And she said to my dad, I didn't destroy your relationship with your family. You need to get that relationship healed. And so before they ever said, I do to each other, my dad was out building a relationship with all 7 of us. And he did it very well. We were grateful for that. But you know what I learned about my dad? He was a counselor for the 700 Club. If you're familiar with that, people would call in and he would take the calls. He'd be praying for people and counseling them. My dad was faithful at his church. They called him the candy man because he'd stand at the back greeting people and always had a piece of candy for somebody. In fact, we had our long talks. In fact, in this church that he was in, they had a stained glass window that was round, and it was of a star, and it was turned the wrong way, and it was upside down. And according to the neighborhood, they said that's a Satanist church because when the star is upside down, it means it's a Satanist church. When my dad heard that, in his elderly age, he got a ladder, got it up, made sure he loosened up everything so he could turn that window where it was up the right way. He said, no one's going to call our church a Satanist church. He was dedicated and committed to Christ. We had these long talks that were enriching to me. Glad to have those times. Finally, my dad's in the hospital. He has black lung from working with all the coal that he did, and it gets in your lungs, and they call it a black lung disease. And so he's there, and we're having great talks, and I had to come back to New Jersey, and I said, I'm going to have to go. He said, son, he said, I understand you got to go back. He said, but I want you to know something. We're going to see each other again. It was soon after that, 2 weeks later, he passed on. We finally came for the funeral. It was in January, and it snowed so much that nobody was able to come out, or they wouldn't even venture out. But of course, our immediate family was at the funeral home. And his pastor stood before us to share the funeral message, which he said, I didn't write this message for you. Your dad wrote the message. He said, because when I die, I want them to know this message. And many questions that we always had about my dad, why didn't he take my mother back? Or why didn't he do this? He said, when I ended up a chapter of my life, I didn't go backwards. I always moved forwards. He said, and one of the things I move forward to is a relationship with the Lord Jesus Christ. He said, and it would be a shame that I've now gone to heaven and that you would not join me there in a heavenly place. He says, so I'm encouraging you. Would you please ask Jesus Christ in your heart and life? Will you be able to join me? When your time comes, will you close your eyes and you go on to be with the Lord? But what a powerful message. It really wasn't meant for anybody else. It was meant for us. It was a private time, and how it meant so much to me. So I know that regardless of all the mistakes my dad made when I was 10 and left home, I want you to know I have a father that knows Jesus and is up in heaven. And that excites me more than anything. So even on his death, he began to instruct us. Fathers are good examples of godly illustrations. Can I say, I asked my daughters, and I probably shouldn't even share this with you, but I'm going to, all right? I asked my daughters, I said, so have I been an example for you? I said, I'm going to preach this morning, and I want you to give me some ideas. And all of them said, you've put a work ethic in us that we wouldn't have had if we didn't watch you. And when we bought a house in Bayonne and we were fixing it up, I mean, my one daughter said, you began to show me as you fixed up this house how to take care of the responsibilities we have to provide for our family. And she learned some skill sets. If you want a floor laid, she'll lay a floor for you. I never had a son, but my daughter can do it because I taught her, right? So we had some good things that we did together. And when we went on vacation one time, there was a death of a little baby back in Bayonne, and they called us and told us the death of the child. And I went to my kids and said, look, can we cut this vacation short to go back and handle the funeral? They agreed. And they remember that. It wasn't like, pack up, we got to go. No, we talked to them. And that was important. I would take my one daughter on visitation with me to someone that was shut in, and she's watching me. I didn't know she watched me so closely as I took care of somebody that couldn't get out of the house and served them communion and prayed for them. They said, we learned a lot by watching you. Oh, that's pretty awesome. And one time they did not go with me, but they heard the story, and I'll explain it to you. I went to a home, and anybody here Puerto Rican? Okay. Now, do not judge me for what I'm saying, please. But it's probably only the Puerto Ricans in Jersey City that did this. Anytime I went to their house and we shared something together, a meal, they would bring the dishes out of the cupboard and they would wash them all over again. Then set the table and we would eat. I asked them one time, why did you do that? And they said, well, where we come from in Puerto Rico, we had a lot of roaches. And said, we want to make sure there's been no roaches crawling on our plates. And they gave us clean plates. So I'm at a lady's house, and she's Puerto Rican, and she is really distraught. And she had coffee on, and she put a cup out, and she didn't even rinse it that morning. It was just, she set it out. She poured me a cup of coffee. And I look in and I see a roach in my coffee cup. And I'm saying, if I tell her there's a roach in this coffee cup, I'm not going to be able to minister to her because she'll be so devastated that she won't be able to tell me what's on her mind. So I said, what should I do, God? So I drank the roach. I'm healthy today. If you're not healthy, you might want to try roach. No. But my kids always remember that because I wanted to make sure in a loving relationship that I would touch their lives. That was so important for me. And they said that anything the church needed or the school needed, they knew that we were there to take care of it. One daughter said, your steady and faithful presence in our lives was a constant source of strength and support and love. And he says, I was a people person, naturally connected with others, making them feel and seem valued and seen as valued. And they said, what stands out the most is your unwavering commitment to the Lord's work. Even to this day, you continue to serve faithfully, always looking for opportunities to bless others and fulfill God's calling. Your love for people is deep in your heart, and it's caused us to look deep in our heart that we can have that same compassion, same humility, same servant's heart. They gave me the answers, and I thought, that's great. Makes me feel good as a father. But I shared about my father because there's many things he did wrong. And if your father did things wrong, you need to be aware of that. But look at the good. There was a lady, she was a writer, Christian writer. Nobody knew, but she had a terrible relationship with her father. She was like, never took time out to be with him. In fact, he was the worst of all fathers throughout the area of the world, as far as she was concerned. But one day she got a call and said, Dad's in the hospital. He's not going to make it. If you want to spend any time with Dad, you're going to have to go in and visit with him. She regretted it. She struggled with it. She said, what am I going to have to say to him? There's nothing possibly this man did that I could appreciate. And finally, she went in and sat by his bed. You could tell the look on his face that he wasn't that happy to see her. And she wasn't that happy to see him. But all of a sudden, God's Spirit spoke to her and said, stop looking at everything that makes you angry. Stop looking at all the things you think he did wrong. Look at the things he did right. And tell your dad, thank you. She began to go through a list of things. Her dad's countenance changed. He got a smile on his face. And for the first time, they were like relating to each other. Because sometimes we look for the negative and that's all you see. But I want you to know there's a God that'll reveal to you the goodness, the man who is your father. And if you need to, write a letter or go to the cemetery and read it, or walk to the cemetery where maybe your father has passed and stand there and talk to your father. I don't care if someone thinks you're nuts, because you need to unload your heart. See, my mother was so angry at my dad for marrying her best friend that when her best friend died, I wanted to take my mother over to the funeral home. They had viewing 2 to 4, 7 to 9. I wanted to take her between 4 and 7. I wanted her to just stand there and let this lady have it that's laying in the casket, because she needed to unload this and get it off her mind. In fact, if she wanted to slap the lady, I'd say slap her, because when you're dead, there's no marks. It's only when you got the blood flowing that you can tell. I thought, even if she wanted to slap her silly, I don't really care. I would have loved to take her there, because my father hurt her so much. But I don't care how much someone's hurt you. You got to talk to God. You got to get it right. You can't really say, I'm going to go to heaven, if you can't make things right with each other, regardless if he's here or not here. I hope this is a powerful message to speak into your heart. It's been powerful for me as I grew up with this, all these things I've seen, and have God be able to use me out of a broken home where I could have been bitter, angry, upset at the world. God turned my world around, and he'll turn yours around too. Father, we thank you